Okay, we're now being recorded. Thank you everybody for joining us today. This is the onboarding call for 2019 grantees. My name is Travis Hearn. I'm the grant manager at the Office of Community Food Systems, and I'm joined today by Anna Arrowsmith, who many of you have heard from. If you have an implementation grant, she is a grant officer here at the Food and Nutrition Service. She's here with me in the room. Anna, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Anna. So we are going to jump right into it with a few housekeeping remarks. Note that if you have any comments or you need to ask a question, use the chat function. There's no dial-in number for this meeting. All of the audio will come through your computer. And as I noted just a moment ago, the webinar will be recorded. We'll be sharing a PDF of the slides after this presentation, and once the recording has finished processing and is available, we'll send it out to everyone as well. So we ask that you watch the recording within the next 2 weeks if you're not able to attend the whole webinar, or if someone on your team needs to also watch the recording but wasn't able to attend today, please have them watch it within the next 2 weeks so they're completely up to speed. And when the slides are sent out, all of the relevant phone numbers and email addresses that are in the slide presentation will be available in the PDF, and the links that are shared in this presentation will also be available in that PDF. There will be hyperlinks in the PDF that you can use to access those web pages. I'll start off by sharing a brief agenda of what we're going to talk through today. We're going to start by talking about some of the key contacts throughout the life of your grant, the roles and responsibilities for each of the people on the farm to school team, some of the resources for training and technical assistance. Anna will walk us through the financial systems, and she and I will work together to tell you about evaluation and reporting. And then briefly at the end, we'll talk about next steps, and if there are any questions at the end of the presentation, we'll get to them then. If you can type a question in the chat box at any time, we'll flag it and we'll put it in the queue for the end of the presentation. But it may happen that you ask a question and then that issue is resolved before the end of the presentation. So that's why we're holding until the end for any questions. First of all, I want to say congratulations. This was a very exciting year for us. We made more farm to school grant awards than we have in any previous years. We're very excited to have such a large cohort on board. And you can see here a little bit of what types of grants we awarded and where they were distributed. And that being said, I want to move into who your key contacts are. So if you have an implementation grant, well, that's the next slide, but if you, with your grant, you'll have a program officer and a grant officer. And who your program officer is varies based on where you're located, and who your grant officer is varies based on what type of grant you have. And you can find out this information by checking your award letter. These were sent by either Carla Garcia or Anna Arrowsmith, and the person who sent your award letter is the person who is your grant officer. And these are our grant officers here, a little bit more about them. While these may be pictures of Wonder Woman and Black Widow, and Anna Arrowsmith and Carla Garcia do not have real superpowers, to me they are superheroes because of the important work that they do on our grant program and the incredible effort that they put into every day. So I could not do my job without them. So though they're not members of the Justice League or the Avengers, they are very valuable members of the farm to school team. If you have a planning or training grant, then Carla Garcia is your grant officer. And if you have an implementation grant, Anna Arrowsmith is your grant officer. And I just want to, again, give a very special thanks to our grant officers for all of the hard work that they do with, again, an unprecedented number of grantees this year. Your program officer is one of these individuals who's located in the regional offices. Some of you may have already heard from your regional leads. Others you should be hearing from them within the next week or so. I do want to make a very important distinction here. The map uses the current regional alignment for the Food and Nutrition Service, but beginning with fiscal year 2020 in October, we will be using a new regional alignment. Your program officer will not change. We've planned to reach out to grantees based on where their realigned location is. So note that this map is not this map does not reflect the incoming realignment, but you will be contacted by your realigned program officer. In the Mountain Plains Regional Office, Andrea Alma works is based in Colorado, works all across Mountain Plains. Jenna Siegel is in the Midwestern Regional Office based in Illinois. Samantha Benjamin Kirk is based in Georgia in the Southeast Regional Office. Rachel Spencer is based in Texas in the Southwest Regional Office. And Juliana Arnett is based in the Western Regional Office in California. I also want to make a special note on this page that the phone number you see for Juliana here, if you're a Western Region grantee, this is the correct phone number to use to contact her. On the previous flyer that we shared with program officer contact information, that number was incorrect. So if you need to reach out to Juliana by phone and you're in the Western region, please use the contact information that's on this slide. And then we're temporarily down a regional lead in the Northeast regional offices and the Mid-Atlantic regional offices, but we're receiving a lot of help from those regions to help bring grantees up to speed who are located there. I'll go into that a little bit later when I'm talking about the type of information and the type of contact you'll receive from your program officer, but I want to make a note now that if you're in Nero or Mero, you won't be forgotten. You will be contacted, but we just don't have a permanent regional lead in place in those locations at this time. As I mentioned with the realignment, a couple of states will be moving. If you're in Iowa, you'll be moving from the Mountain Plains Regional Office to the Midwest Regional Office. In Utah, from Mountain Plains to Southwest. Arizona will move from the Western region to the Southwestern region, and the U.S. Virgin Islands will move from the Mid-Atlantic region to the Northeast region. Again, this shouldn't affect the way that you interact with your program officers here early in your grant. It should have no effect on your grant, but just so you're aware and so you understand the differences between the map that I just showed and the new alignment, I've provided this table for you. And the national office staff is located in Alexandria, Virginia. I am Travis Hearn. You can see me clearly in that image from when I had much more hair, but it has since receded and I don't look quite as young. And then in the top two pictures, our senior technical advisor is Gwen Holcomb, and our research and communications point is Robert Eck. And we have a small staff in national office, but a very capable, very high-performing staff, I must say. And I'm just kind of there. But I'm also excited that we will be having a new director come on board very soon. So this is the extent of our team for right now, but we will have an additional member soon. Okay, getting into the specifics of your grants. I'll start talking about roles and responsibilities. For the grantee, for the people on this call, we ask that you meet the terms and conditions of your grant award, enroll in the online systems ASAP and FIPPers, work on your project and ensure that your goals and objectives that you created and that you shared in your proposal are being met by everyone who's involved, by yourself, by the partners, and that you're also monitoring and overseeing the project and just basically doing the stuff that you said you would do in your proposal. Submitting financial and progress reports on time, ensuring that everyone follows the rules and regulations, the legal background behind grants, and not really a role of responsibility, but a very valuable resource is the grantee resource page. And I'll talk a little bit more about the grantee resource page later in the presentation, but I do want to note that that page is undergoing some changes since we've brought the new class of grantees on board. So every document on that page may not be up to date at this moment, but you're receiving the most up-to-date documents via email, and we will be updating the grantee resources page as new materials are updated. For the regional leads are kind of our boots on the ground as far as the grant management goes. They're an extremely valuable part of our team. And just like with the grant officers, I would not be able to do my job without them. They're instrumental in working on the Farm to School grant program. They're the main point of contact for grantees. If you have an issue, usually the regional lead is the first line of defense for whatever region you're located in. And then they'll also provide some technical assistance to help grantees meet their goals and objectives. In fact, within the next week or couple of weeks, you should be hearing from your regional lead with an introductory call. You may have regular calls with your regional lead, and then they can assist with if you have any issues with your programmatic reports or just working on your grant. They're an extremely experienced, extremely enthusiastic group, and they make a big difference for national office and for the grantees. They'll also be responsible for approving program changes that require pre-approval. This includes revisions of scope or objectives. So if you need to change from what you originally proposed, the regional lead will be responsible for approving that. For budget revisions, regional leads will work alongside the grant officer to approve those. And if you have any changes to key personnel, it's important that you also contact the regional lead with that information, and they'll provide feedback and approval if necessary. The regional leads often attend, actually visit sites where the action of the grant is happening. The regional leads are going and seeing how things look, seeing if there's any assistance that they can provide, and just really sharing resources and making sure that the grantees have what they need to be successful. I will say that it's not always necessary that every single grant project receive a site visit. As great as that would be, there are budget and time limitations that sometimes preclude that from happening, but the regional leads do their best to visit the ones that they can. For the grant officers, I actually might, Anna, would you like to take over this one, or do you want me to tell you what your job is?
No, because you might give me more work, Travis. So your grants officers, which is myself for the implementation grants and Carla Garcia for the planning and the training grants, we are your main points of contact for all things financial, whether it is questions about budget, questions about financial reporting. We review and post your quarterly financial reports, and anything else you can think of that involves your money, accessing your funds through ASAP, things like that. And honestly, the grants officers and the regional leads work pretty closely together. So even though one of us may take the lead over the other, and any questions you may have, we work as a team throughout. So we're always talking to each other behind the scenes, regardless of which one of us you reach out to or which one of us reaches back out to you in response.
Absolutely, and the same is true for national office and the grant officers I'm communicating with. There's usually some kind of communication going on with me between Anna or Carla on a daily basis, especially at this busy time of year. We're exchanging messages of some kind. So usually if you send something to me and it needs to go to the grant officer, I'll be able to get it there, no problem. I wouldn't say usually, I would say almost 100% of the time. So now for the next part, we have a pop quiz planned. If you think you know the answer to this question, type it in the chat box. You can just type a single letter, A, B, or C. You don't have to type the entire answer, but let's see how close of attention you've been paying. If you have a new project director, with whom should you share this information? With your grants officer, with just your grants officer, with just your program officer, or with both your grants officer and your program officer? And I'm going to scroll through the chat box and see what we've got. Okay, I'm seeing a good mix of answers, a lot of B's.
Nobody wants me. Everybody wants program or a combo, it seems.
That's true. We've got very few A answers. Okay, it seems like the consensus is building towards C, and the answer is in fact C. If you have a new project director, please share this information with both the grants officer and the program officer. Especially if the point of contact is changing, that's absolutely critical information to share with both program and the grants office. Pop quiz question 2. If you're having trouble submitting your financial report, Who should you contact? Just your grants officer, just your program officer, no one, or both the grants officer and CC the program officer? All right, seeing a lot of A's, seeing a lot of the D answer. Everyone was paying close attention when we said grants officer handles financial stuff, so that's a great sign that we have a lot of A answers. Okay. I see a couple of D answers. And in fact, the answer is D. Contact your grant officer and CC the program officer. It's a great idea to keep your regional lead looped in, even if it is a financial or budget question that requires the expertise of the grant officer. It does help for program to be appraised of what's going on. And pop quiz question 3. Jackpot, you received a 20% discount on your Harvest of the Month flyer order. This savings is more than 10% of your total grant budget. You would like to move the extra funds to another budget line item. Who should you contact? A, your mom to celebrate, B, the grants officer, C, the program officer, or D, both the grants officer and the program officer. Okay, I see a lot of D answers. Wow, there's going to be some disappointed moms out there. Okay, got a D and then A. And the answer is D, both the grant officer and the program officer. That's correct. When in doubt, it's a perfectly good idea, perfectly legitimate plan to reach out to both the grant officer and the program officer. There's never any harm in keeping one in the loop about what's going on with the other, and you're bound to get some sort of helpful answer. And again, if your contact goes to the wrong person, there's really no wrong person, because the person you reach out to will get your inquiry to the correct team member. There are a few different training and technical assistance. Great job on the pop quizzes. Thanks everyone for participating. There are a few training and technical assistance resources out there. One example is webinars like the one that you're on right now. We'll be having another webinar soon to go over reporting and evaluation, and then there are some webinar series available on the website as well that you can watch recordings of. There are USDA resources on the website. There's resources for current grantees, and then there's just general resources on the website. You may find useful information in any of those places. The Grantee Gathering in September, if you're a planning or implementation grantee, we really look forward to seeing you at the Grantee Gathering in September. That's a great time to not only meet your program officer and national office team members face-to-face. Anna will also be joining us for that meeting, and you'll be able to network with other current grantees as well. And then targeted technical assistance is just the type of help that you may get from your regional lead. And site visits, again, some of the technical assistance you could look forward to from a regional lead, pending availability. This is an example of the planning toolkit. That URL will be live in the PDF that I'll send in follow-up. The Farm to School Planning Toolkit is available on the website, and especially for planning grantees, this is an excellent resource for helping you get started to understand what kinds of resources you may need throughout your project, or kind of just getting brainstorming ideas about where to go next. And then the Farm to School Toolkit covers growing your Farm to School program, and it will help planning grantees who have a special requirement. All planning grantees are required to submit an action plan along with their final report. This is a very important requirement, and sometimes it's the type of thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle between the start of the grant and the end of the grant, or if there are a lot of changes in personnel during your project, the newest information about the action plan may not get passed along. So I really want to emphasize the necessity of completing an action plan, but also the resources that are available to help you through that process, including some sample action plans that are posted on the grantee resource page. So if you're a planning grantee, we really look forward to reading those action plans at the end of your grant project. Please don't forget that they're due at the end along with your final report, and we at National Office and in the regions will do our best to help you remember as well. With targeted technical assistance, we expect for in the next week or several weeks for the regional leads to conduct an initial one-to-one call or potentially a regional group call depending on availability and scheduling. Here I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier about not having a regional lead full-time in Nero or Mero at the moment. You will still receive some outreach from program during this time within the next few weeks. Either I will be reaching out if you're in the Mid-Atlantic region, or another staff member in the Northeastern Regional, who's based in the Northeastern Regional Office, Lizzie Ackerman, will be reaching out if you're located in that region. So we're very grateful to Lizzie for providing herself as a resource and making time to reach out to the grantees. So we're glad that everyone in Nero and Mero will have the chance to talk to someone about the grant. You can also email or call at any time. So we're here to help you. So if you have a question, you can reach out to me, to your grant officer, or to your regional lead. A little more about the Grantee Gathering. As I said, we're extremely excited to have everybody join us in September in New Orleans, Louisiana on the 19th and 20th for the Grantee Gathering. This is a requirement for planning and implementation grantees. It is not required for training grantees. This is an extremely valuable opportunity to network, to talk to other grantees who are also beginning their projects this year, or maybe have some prior experience and are expanding their projects through the grant. You'll be able to talk about farm to school best practices, and there will be presentations from farm to school team members and from others that are sharing these best practices, along with national expertise. And everyone should have received at some point a flyer that has your registration with hotel information as well. The important thing to remember is that the project director is required to attend the Grantee Gathering. It depends on how much you budgeted for the Grantee Gathering if a second person can attend, but we ask that because of space restrictions, no more than 2 people plan to come to the Grantee Gathering. And then the nitty-gritty of the actual attendance is on this next slide, noting that activities will take place on the 19th and 20th. Since we're beginning the morning of the 19th, we ask that attendees reserve their rooms for the night of the 18th, that everyone plan to arrive the 18th so they can stay at the hotel and then join us. The event will be at the hotel so that they can stay there and then join us the morning of the 19th, and then stay the 19th and join us the morning of the 20th into the early afternoon. We received a few questions last week and earlier this week about what time the Grantee Gathering would be concluding. We have an agenda available. I'll be including the agenda on the follow-up from this webinar. So if you haven't received the agenda, reach out to us. Reach out to me or to Robert Eck. Robert Eck, who was on our earlier slide on the national office team, is taking point on the Grantee Gathering in particular. So if you have any issues with registering or reserving your hotel or just general questions, you can direct those to Robert at robert.eck@usda.gov. And again, the SurveyMonkey link here will be live, so you'll be able to click on it when you receive the PDF if you have not yet completed your registration. And as far as deadlines go, we ask that everyone reserve their room by the 14th, by August 14th, and that you register online August 14th. Please note that the registration and the hotel reservation are not the same. The registration is for the roster so that when the farm to school team arrives there, we know who to expect. And then the hotel reservation is for your accommodations. Okay, pop quiz question 4. You have to think back a couple of slides to figure out which of these statements is false. Only planning grantees must prepare and submit an action plan by the end of their grant. The Grantee Gathering is optional, or the Farm to School Grantee Resource page has webinars, toolkits, and other helpful resources. Remember, the question is, which of these is false? Okay. It seems like there's a consensus that B is the false fact, so let's see what the correct answer is. It is B. So this is something of a tricky question, because the Grantee Gathering is not optional. It is mandatory for planning and implementation grantees, but training grantees do not go to the Grantee Gathering. So there's a little bit of nuance to that answer, but A and C are definitely true. Planning grantees must prepare and submit an action plan by the end of their grant, and C, the Farm to School Grantee Resource webpage is extremely useful. And now I'll turn it over to Anna, who will be talking about accessing grant financial systems. So thank you again for joining us, Anna, and I look forward to hearing what you have for us.
Thanks, Travis. Okay, so I'm going to talk about ASAP and FIPPers. You all should have at least already heard about ASAP from either myself or Carla, depending on the type of grant you have. ASAP is the U.S. Treasury's program for dispersing funds to various entities, including federal grantees. You received a copy of the ASAP setup form with your award documents, and you should have completed it and sent it back to your grant officer. I know that I am still going through the ones that I received, and I know I have a lot. It's possible I have all of them. If I haven't received yours, I will be reaching out to you. Unless you already know you haven't sent it, then please do send it in to me. So we can get you your money, essentially. I think you want that. And then the other online system is FIPPers. FIPPers is the USDA system for submitting your quarterly financial reports. We purposely have not sent out information on setting up your FIPPers account for two reasons. The first being we prioritized getting your ASAP account set up so we can get your funds to you. And number two, we find that grantees often get confused between FIPPers and ASAP. They'll set up one and they think they're finished, and then they never set up the other one, or they think they both do the same thing. So we just decided to put FIPPers on hold until we can get your ASAP set up and get your funds in place. And then after this webinar, Carla and I will be sending out via an email blast to all of our grantees with instructions and forms necessary to get FIPPers set up. So these are the websites for ASAP and FIPPers. Once your ASAP account is set up, this is the website that you'll visit to withdraw your funds. And ASAP essentially serves just like a bank account. When you need to withdraw funds, you go in, you make the request, and they get transferred to your account. One of the things that we do ask with ASAP is only withdraw the funds as you need them. Please resist the temptation to go in and withdraw all of your grant funds or withdraw a large chunk that you have not yet necessarily obligated. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that we don't want you to transfer it to an interest-bearing account and have it just sit there. You know, that 0.001% interest you could be earning technically is program income. So we don't want that just gets to be sticky. And then the other thing is if you do find yourself with unspent funds at the end of the grant period, it's a lot easier to return them to us if they've stayed in your ASAP account versus if you have withdrawn them and then need to return them to us. The bullets on this slide for FIPPers are actually a little bit out of order, but the instructions that you receive via email will be in the proper order. So looking at the last bullet on here, the first thing that you're going to need to do is obtain Level 2 e-authentication, and that is discussed on the next slide. And then once you have that set up, you'll submit an FNS 674 form to Tim Cray, whose email is on this slide. But please be sure to copy your grants officer. I know that I like to give them a little scan and make sure that you've got everything you need. So if there is a mistake or something gets left out, we can catch it right away and keep you on track to get that set up. Okay, the next thing is obtaining Level 2 e-authentication. And I don't know if this link where it says complete the online form found here, I don't know if that link works, but again, when we send out the email with instructions, you will get a live link that does indeed work. So we have actually come out of the dark ages just a little bit, and you should now be able to complete your Level 2 registration entirely online. You'll need to be able to answer a series of security questions similar to the ones that you get if you're applying for a loan or something like that. like what street did you live on in 4th grade, and other questions of that nature. So if you can answer all those questions, then you can complete it online entirely. If for some reason you can't answer all the questions, then you'll need to complete the initial registration online, and then you'll visit a local registration authority, and they'll just ask to see your photo ID, and they'll link it to the online registration that you completed. Just so we know that you're you. There are several LRAs in each state, and it shouldn't be too terribly far to go to get to one. But I am optimistic that you won't need to do that now. Okay, this is a snippet of the FNS 674 form, and you're going to need to fill this out regardless of whether you are a new FIPRS user or if you're an existing FIPRS user. The instructions that we send out will go over what needs to go in each box as well as which boxes can be skipped. But I wanted to highlight a few of the more important ones. And just a reminder, FIPRS is the system that you'll use to submit your financial reports. Box 5, highlighted on this slide, asks for your USDA eAuth user ID. And that is something that you will create when you obtain your Level 2 e-authentication. And I have to confess, that is not clearly stated on the form, and I do need to go back and look at our instructions. So I'm going to repeat myself. The information that goes in box 5, your USDA eAuth user ID, that's the user ID that you will create when you obtain your Level 2 e-authentication. And this is why we tell you that you have to do that before submitting the form, because if you submit your form without that information, we can't process it. One of the next ones is box 15, which is type of access. And the instructions for this are very clear, but I'm going to mention them here anyway. Your options are either data entry or certify. Someone in your organization must have certify permissions. If you have certify permission, you can also do data entry. But if you only have data entry permission, you cannot certify. And if you can't certify your financial report, then I never get it. So it's like you never did it. So you want to make sure that somebody has certify permissions when you fill this out. And then the next one, and it's highlighted here, is box 16. You're either asking to have your profile added to FIPRS or modifying an existing profile. So if you already have a FIPRS account from a previous FNS grant, then you're asking to modify your existing account, and essentially what that's doing is adding this Farm to School award to your existing account. But if this is your first FNS grant, then you're going to select Add, because we'll be adding you to FIPRS for the first time. Okay, drawing down grant funds. In order to access your grant funds, you're going to have to complete your registration in ASAP. So again, that form that we sent you and you returned to us, the ASAP setup form, once we get those, we verify your DUNS and your EIN numbers, and then we initiate the registration and send all of your information over to the U.S. Treasury. ASAP is managed by U.S. Treasury, so we do not have access to that account once we get it set up. That would be like me wiring you $100 for something, but then I cannot then go look in your bank account to see if it's there. So think of ASAP, again, like a bank account. So for my implementation grantees, Treasury does not have your forms yet. I'm still processing those. I'm not sure where Carla is in the process of getting the planning and training forms sent over. She has about half the forms that I do, so she might be a little ahead of me. What will happen next is that ASAP will contact the person that you listed as a point of contact on your ASAP enrollment form, and then they'll receive a series of emails to complete the whole setup process. It's a multi-step process for security purposes. You know, we don't want somebody to go in and think they can submit on your behalf. So please do keep an eye on your emails. If you send something back and don't receive anything else, check your spam folder. You can also reach out to ASAP support line. There's the phone number is on the slide here. They're extremely helpful if you have any questions. Another thing that ASAP offers is they have some new user trainings, and they have one conveniently scheduled next week from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There is a link here where you can go on and register for the training, and there's also an email address here that you can reach out to Cornell Webb, and hopefully he will help you with that as well. All right, pop quiz. True or false, ASAP and FIPPers are the same systems? Go ahead and enter true or false in the chat box. Yay, I'm liking what I see. I am seeing lots of falses coming through, and that is correct. ASAP and FIPPers are not the same systems. Again, ASAP is the online system from which funds are withdrawn, like your government bank account, and FIPPers is the portal that you will use to submit your financial reports. And that is it for me, so I'm going to turn it back over to Travis.
All right, thanks, Anna. Thanks for sharing all that information about the financials of the grant. Again, this is why the grant officers are extremely important to me being able to do my job, because without them, I'd be completely lost on all of the financial necessities. So I'll take over and take us through reporting and evaluation. And I'm going to try to get through all of our slides because I want to leave plenty of time for questions. I've seen that we've had a few come through, so I'll try and keep that in mind and be considerate of everyone's time. So a brief overview of what's in this section. The project evaluation should be completed according to plans outlined in your grant application. You may remember that when you wrote your proposal, there was an evaluation section, and the expectation is that you will complete evaluation activities in accordance with what you proposed in the evaluation section of your application. The USDA financial and programmatic reports are submitted online. Anna just talked about FIPPers, where you'll submit financial reports, and the National Office for the Office of Community Food Systems uses a different set of programs to file reports. So I'll talk a little bit about the requirements and then go into detail about the reports themselves. So for programmatic reporting, there are 5 bullets here, so it looks a little bit daunting, but I assure you that it's not all going to come at you at once. So there's a little bit of time to work with each of these and learn more and prepare and complete them. First, you'll receive the contact survey following this webinar. This is so you can report any contact changes to your grant. You can put a backup contact. You can put different contacts for your financial questions versus your programmatic questions to determine who from national office or who from the farm to school team should reach out to you. The second report we will ask for is the baseline report. This is an actual progress report. It is part of your progress reporting requirements. The baseline report is about the initial conditions of your project. The semi-annual progress reports will be collected by the grant officer every quarter and by the program officer every other quarter at the end of quarters 2 and quarter 4. The final report is submitted by the grantee within 90 days of the end of the grant term. And finally, the satisfaction survey is an optional survey that we aim to send out every year so we can get a little bit of information about how we're doing on our grant management. And as I alluded to, financial reporting occurs on a quarterly basis, while programmatic reporting occurs on a semi-annual basis. Stay tuned for more information about a reporting and evaluation webinar to happen later this summer. First, the contact survey. As I mentioned, it will be the first survey you receive. It'll come as a link through email. It'll be due within 1 week. I realize that seems like a really quick turnaround, but I assure you this is an extremely short survey. You'll only need contact information for the people who are participating on your grant. This way you can indicate multiple points of contact. And please do be vigilant about completing this report and returning it to us within a week so that we're able to continue communicating with you about any vital information you may need. The baseline report will go to planning and implementation contacts that are shared through that survey. It will be distributed on September 30th it will be distributed on October 1st, actually, for the reporting period that ends September 30th. But it will be due at the end of October on the 31st. But you can start organizing this information now, getting everything available, figuring out what your responses are going to be. It'll ask for some basic information about what are the initial conditions of your project. Like I mentioned earlier, what are you starting with? How many participants do you have? How many trainings have you conducted? Things like that. And this will be important for comparing to the final report, which I'll talk about in a couple of slides. But you can keep your eye out for the reporting and evaluation webinar to come later this summer, where we'll talk about this in greater detail. Please note the training grantees do not complete a baseline report. This is for implementation and planning grantees. And again, you'll receive that on October 1st. And it will you can spend the time until then collecting the information you'll need to complete it. There is a link to a sample baseline report on the grantee resource page, and I'll also be sending that information out in the follow-up email. The first progress report will be collected April 1st. This is about what's happened in your grant over the previous 6 months. You'll receive an invitation on April 1st with the report to be due completed on April 30th. The next few bullets are some of the things you might report in that document. And again, the template and the types of questions you can expect are available on the grantee resources page. This will go to your reporting contact, another reason why it's extremely important to share your information via the contact survey. Anna, I'll turn it back over to you for this slide about financial reports, since you know vastly more than I do.
Okay, your first financial report, it says it gets sent October 1st. Actually, October 1st is when you can technically submit your first report. It's due October 31st, and it's for the prior 3 months. So, oh gosh, I have to do math in my head. June, July, and August. July, August, and September of 2019. I'm so sorry. Is the first reporting period. So it's the first quarter. And then you have 30 days after the end of the quarter to complete your report and submit it. And again, it is submitted online using FIPRS. FIPRS itself does not send out reminders, but we do have an automated system that is linked to your grant file that does send out reminders, although they do seem to be random at times, and they don't always go out because we're not completely out of the dark ages yet.
All right, thanks, Anna. Here's a closer look at the report submission dates. Remember that the first day you can submit your report is the day following the end of the quarter, and then we expect reports within 30 days from that date. Note that if the invitation date, the supposed invitation date, falls on a weekend, it may move a little bit. It may move a little bit around that date. But we'll also be getting together a timeline that we'll post on the grantee resource page where you'll be able to access this information at any time. And then final reports. As I alluded to earlier, final reports are due at the end of your grant. They are due within 90 days. And if you're a planning grantee, your action plan is also due within 90 days after the end of your grant. For programmatic reports, you'll receive an email with a custom link. For financial reports, you'll have to log into FIPRS to complete your report. And all of this information will be available in the slides that I'll send out after the webinar and also on the grantee resource page. Some of that, as I mentioned earlier, is still being updated, but we'll have that information on there as soon as we can. Okay, pop quiz question 6. We're almost near the end, so I hope everyone is staying with us and is ready to answer this question. True or false, progress and financial reports are quarterly and 30 days after the reporting period ends. Okay, this one is tricky. Okay, it seems that most people are answering false. There's a couple of trues sprinkled in there. All right, some people are putting reasons for their answer. That's great. This answer is false because progress reports are semi-annual. They are due every other quarter at the end of every even-numbered quarter, while financial reports are due quarterly. But the due within 30 days is correct for financial and programmatic reports, excluding the final report, which is 90 days. Next steps. I've mentioned several times the grantee resource page. Here's a screenshot of what it looks like. If you want to Google it now and you see this page, then you know you've arrived at the right place, but I've also included a link here. And I'll also be sending a grantee checklist with the email that will go out after this webinar. These are the items on the checklist. We've also added here to sign up for the Pharma School e-letter, the DIRT. It's an extremely important resource. And this is a great opportunity for you to check the things that you've done so far and to monitor your progress. It will also include instructions for completing that FNS Form 674, which I will also include on my email. And I think Anna plans to follow up with some more information about FIPPers and the Form 674. And I want to say thank you. Thanks for being attentive during this webinar. Thanks for responding to our pop quizzes. And thank you for your questions. We'll get to those in just a moment. But just a final reminder that you're more than welcome to call or email anyone whose contact information I shared as your program or grant officer in this slide. Pharmaschool@usda.gov is kind of the one-stop shop for grant-related questions. If you can't remember who you should email, you can always email Farm2School and we'll get your inquiry to the right place. And then if you have an implementation grant, Anna Aerosmith is your key point of contact for financial questions. And if you're a planning or training grantee, then Carla Garcia is your key point of contact for other questions. But again, send your questions to any of us and we'll make sure they get to the right place. And now we'll go over some of the questions we received. Okay. We had one question for whether we could give the names of the grants offices again. I'll just go back to this slide where you can see Anna Aerosmith and Carla Garcia's information. Anna Aerosmith for implementation and Carla Garcia for planning or training grants. And one about the Northeastern region. So yes, that's correct. The question is whether there is a regional lead in the Northeastern region. There's not currently a permanent full-time regional lead available in the Northeastern Regional Office, but we do have someone who will be helping us reach out to grantees. So if you're in the Northeastern region, you should be hearing from Lizzie Ackerman soon. She'll be able to contact you and kind of bring you up to speed on anything we may have missed on this webinar or anything that's particular to the Northeastern region. Is the Grantee Gathering the same as the mandatory training that was required by the grant application? Yes, it is. This was the face-to-face meeting, I think is how it's phrased in the application materials. We ask that people budget for that so that each grantee is able to hopefully use their grant funds for the travel, so that because the travel policies or the availability of funds can vary based on organization. So we ask that grantees plan for that using their grant funds. That is the same, yes, that is the same meeting. They are one and the same. For the grantee meeting in September, can I clarify the schedule or agenda? There was another question on here that was also about what time everything would end on the 20th. So I'll try to cover both of those here. I will be sharing out an agenda after this webinar that's our draft agenda, but the end times should be basically what the final end times will be. I think that right now we have activities scheduled to end at 3:30. So if you have any questions specific to your travel situation, reach out to Farm2School, or even better to Robert Eck, who's taking point on the Grantee Gathering, and we'll be able to help you talk through it. And 3:30, I think I said that the activities would end at 3:30. So keep that in mind, and then also do confirm when I send out the agenda. Can we request a prepay in preparation for the meeting? Anna, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'll take that. We can't send out your grant funds any further ahead of time than we would otherwise do it anyway. So I guess that's a no. I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. But the funds your funds, grant funds, as long as you follow through on the steps to set up your ASAP account, should be in place in plenty of time to pay for your travel.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I also want to add, as we're going through these questions, if maybe there was more to your question or that you don't feel that we actually got to it or gave you a satisfactory answer, you can follow up with us at farmtoschool@usda.gov or with your grant officer to ask for additional assistance. I was asked to clarify whether regional leads have communicated with the grantees in their new regional alignment. I don't know to what extent exactly every regional lead has reached out to their grantees, but our regional leads will be working with the realigned regions. So if you were in one of those states that has shifted regions, you'll be hearing from your new region's regional lead. So if you were in Iowa, for example, and you used to be located in the Mountain Plains Regional Office, you'll now be associated with the Midwestern Regional Office. We have a matching donation of $15,000. Should I have them put this in ASAP, or will I hold this at my institution? Anna?
You will hold that at your institution. ASAP won't let you put any money in there. That is different from your bank account.
A question about the Grantee Gathering. This is a very specific question, but it may apply to multiple people. What if we plan to bring a future hired program director but haven't made a final decision on the hiree? The registration asks for guest information for all attendees. I would say email robert.eck@usda.gov. But I do think it should be fine. The registration itself is just for us to know who to expect. If you have to change your registration information after the survey is closed, just email us and let us know, and we'll make sure that we have the correct names on our roster for when everybody arrives. Should the person completing level 2 e-authentication be the key program staff or the financial manager?
So it should be the person that's going to be submitting your financial reports. In most cases, it will be your financial manager. If you are a super small organization and you don't have a separate financial manager, then it could be the key program staff. But you want the person that knows the numbers and knows how much you have spent or obligated in any given quarter to be able to submit that report. And I actually, before I hand the phone back to Travis, there was the same question later about ASAP. It should be the person who you want within your organization to go in and be able to withdraw your funds from ASAP. And I am going to address a tricky issue that has come up in the past with other grants where somebody leaves, the person that was authorized to withdraw funds from ASAP leaves the organization before handing over the reins to ASAP and getting a new person set up. That takes a long time if you do it that way because it's just a load more paperwork. So it wouldn't hurt to have more than one person within your organization have access to both ASAP and FIPPers. And that's something that you can, for FIPPers, you can just have as many people as you would like, obtain level 2 e-authentication, and set up a FIPPers account. For ASAP, that is something that you would do during the enrollment process, and the folks at Treasury would help you with that. And I think the next one is for me as well.
Yep.
Who from an organization? Yeah, I think I answered this one. It's essentially, might the program manager be different than the organization's finance manager? So in some cases, yes, and in some cases, no. It depends on the size of your organization. And really, it's up to you to determine who has access to these systems.
I've got one, what is the difference between ASAP and SAM?
Well, that's a tricky one. We didn't even talk about SAM on the webinar. So ASAP, as we said ad nauseum, is this Treasury system for dispersing funds. SAM is System for Award Management, and that houses all of the information about your organization. It includes your DUNS number and your EIN, and you have to have a current SAM record in order to receive a grant from FNS. Yeah, so there's that. And I think I'm going to take one more because I see it's for me, and then I'm going to give it back to Travis. An email address for the project director was typed incorrectly on some of the grant forms, and it sounds like some of the emails are going to the correct address and some are going to the incorrect address. Send that to both farmtoschool@usda.gov and also send it to your grant officer, because your grant officers maintain your electronic record, and that is your official grant record. But at the same time, a lot of important programmatic information comes from the Farm to School team, so you want to make sure both of us know.
Okay, thanks, Anna. I've been getting questions coming in fast and furious in the chat box, so I've been trying to flag them as we go and make sure we get to them. I also want to note that we are officially, the webinar was officially scheduled to end at 4 o'clock, but we'll try to address all of the questions before we get offline. And but if you need to go at 4, if you plan to end at 4 Eastern Time and you have to go, please go ahead and feel free to get off the webinar. We'll share the recording, and the recording will have all of the Q&A on it as well. So the next question, Anna, actually this one is for you, I think, too. To book our own flights and rooms, do we have to prepay on our own credit card and then get reimbursed?
That depends on the business practices within your organization. So again, you might need to hold something on your own credit card. Hopefully, especially if you work for a school district, they have something in place where they can hold your room and book your flights, but then when it comes time to actually pay, your grant fund should be in place by then.
Okay, here's a question I can answer. Because of the late decision, is the first quarter still considered July, August, September? Yes, the quarters are not based on when award was made. They're based on the federal fiscal year calendar. So on the fiscal year calendar, quarter 4, or it's referred to as quarter 4, though it is the first quarter that grant activities would take place. But the quarter is, whatever it's called, is July, August, September. And you will receive, your baseline report is not necessarily related to grant activities within that time. It's related to the initial conditions of your grant project. But in FIPRS, the financial report will be related to any expenditures made during that time, correct?
Yes.
The checklist on the Grantee Resources page says 2018. Will there be a new checklist, or does all the information remain the same? That is an excellent question. This is part of what I mentioned earlier with that resources page going through some updates. I will send out the updated grantee checklist. It will say 2019, and all of the dates will be updated to reflect the new fiscal year of grant awards. We will, once we're able, post that information to the Grantee Resource page as well. Great question. Can we provide a short overview of the differences between planning, training, and implementation grants? I don't know that there's a short way to do that, unfortunately. They can vary in a few ways, but I would ask you to refer back to the request for applications if you're curious about really seeing the detailed, more details about the differences between those grant tracks. If you're looking for regional lead contact information, you can find that on this webinar. You can also find it on the website, and then you would have received a flyer with your award package that contained the program officer information for the Farm to School grant. I do ask that you use the information that's in the slideshow, as we did have to update one of the phone numbers to make sure we used the correct business phone. But you can find it, and you can find that information in a number of places, including this presentation. And I'm actually going to take us back to that slide. So if you need to write someone's information down, you can use this slide for reference. If you're working with a consultant to complete your planning grant, who do we recommend attending the gathering? The project director needs to attend the gathering. It depends on your grant, or it depends on your project, I suppose. This one, I would need a little more information. So if you're wondering about your relationship with a consultant and who should attend the Grantee Gathering, go ahead and send an email to farmtoschool@usda.gov and or robert.eck@usda.gov. Can I provide the information on the financial webinar? I think that this may be referring to the reporting and evaluation webinar in a little while. We don't have a firm date set for that yet, but as soon as that information is available, I will share it out and make sure everyone gets an invitation. Does the resource page include information about USDA approved nutrition education curricula? That information may not all be on the grantee resource page, but there's also information on the general resources page. If you have questions about USDA approved nutrition education curricula, I recommend you reach out to your regional lead. If you are in Northeastern region or Mid-Atlantic region, send an email to farmtoschool@usda.gov and we'll get you someone who can help. Will we be sending out a confirmation of registration for the Grantee Gathering? That is a great question. I know that there's not an automatically generated email for the registration, but we will work something out. That is a to be answered. I'm afraid I can't answer right now, but I'll see what our capacity is, and if we're able to do that, I would like to, so that everyone knows that we did in fact get their information. Does ASAP have to be set up before you can set up the e-auth on FIPPers? Anna?
No, excuse me, it does not. We just had you start with the ASAP because we assume that that's more important to you, that you get your funds. But they are completely separate from each other, and they both stand alone from each other. So you can have them both going on concurrently, or you can do one then the other. It's completely up to you.
If we want to send, here's a scenario some of you may face. If we want to send teachers to a training that's taking place this month, but we're not yet set up with funding, can we be reimbursed? Anna, that depends on when they get their...
Well, the grant period, and this actually addresses one of the next questions. The grant period started, I don't have a calendar in front of me, I want to say July 22nd was the start date for the vast majority of these awards. A couple of you had extenuating circumstances, but I would say for 99% of our grantees, July 22nd was the start date for this award. So any activities that were conducted from July 22nd and moving forward can be paid for with grant funds.
And there's another question about, that covers when the grant officially starts. There's another question about when the grant officially ends. That is available on your FNS 529.
Yeah.
The approved current end date is on the FNS 529, and it depends on whether you applied for a 1-year grant or a 2-year grant, but it should end, the official end date should be either June 30th, 2020 or June 30th, 2021, depending on whether you have a 1-year or 2-year grant. Is there anything we should be aware of if we're already registered in ASAP?
Yes, you should be aware that we still want your ASAP registration form or your ASAP setup form, and just let us know when you send it to us. In the body of the email, include a note that says, you know, I'm already registered in ASAP and this is my ASAP recipient ID. Not your user ID, but your recipient ID is a 7-digit number, and that will help us link your existing account to this grant.
All right, thanks, Anna. We had another question about, I want to note that we're a little bit over time, so we are going to do our best to get through all these questions. But also, again, want to be considerate, so if you have to get off the webinar, you may. Are there any requirements around time tracking for employees working on grant activities? Anna?
Not from my perspective, no.
Not from program's perspective either. That may depend, your organization may want to, but we in FNS are not requiring any of that tracking. There was a question about whether we could get a copy of these slides. They will be distributed after the webinar. Our final grant award is less than what we submitted for our implementation grant. How do we adjust the budget lines to match the grant award?
That's something that should have been done during clarification. If we asked you to remove funds from your budget, then you would have already adjusted that paperwork. So I'm wondering if maybe there's an error. So I would contact your grant officer regarding that and just say, you know, we submitted for $50,000, we received 49, what's going on, or something like that, and then we can follow up on it, because that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't have any surprises when you receive your grant award.
And then we have another question on this webinar that asks, what is the budget revision process? I'll say that that's a little bit too extensive to go into at this time, but it's definitely something to bring up with your regional lead once you speak with them. And there's also information about the budget revision process on the grantee resource page. And if you need to make a revision, then a great starting point is to email your grant officer.
Yes.
There are a lot of questions about who can or should attend the Grantee Gathering. If you have specific questions about someone in particular attending, please do email us at farmtoschool@usda.gov or email Robert Eck at robert.eck@usda.gov, and I'll put I did not include his email, but it's just firstname.lastname@usda.gov. If your program director is not managing and reporting for the grant, should they still attend? I would say yes.
Your program director should be managing your grant. That's the point of the program director.
They may not be the person filling out reports, but they should attend the Grantee Gathering, yes. Another question about the budget revision process. Again, I'm sorry, but I'll have to punt any budget revision questions for either your conversation with your regional lead or with your grant officer. And then there was another webinar date on the slide that is likely referring to the ASAP webinar. I will share that, and please note that there will also be that information will also be included in the I'm looking for it now. It'll also be included in the email that I'll send following this webinar. There we go. We have a question about what will happen at the Grantee Gathering, what will be covered. Will it help us clear up any questions about the grant and how we can be successful in implementing the activities? I think that the Grantee Gathering will do a great job of exactly that. You'll have a chance to talk face-to-face with your program officer and to network with other grantees. So I think that you'll encounter a lot of opportunities to troubleshoot issues with your project if you happen to be having those. Okay, and I'm just scrolling through to make sure that we have addressed every question.
There's a question about funding needing to be spent by June 30th, 2020. Activities need to be completed by June 30th, either 2020 or 2021, whenever your grant ends, but you have an additional 90 days to withdraw any remaining funds as long as they are paying for activities that were conducted before your grant period ended.
Okay, and then We have a question about the regional lead situation in the Northeastern Regional Office. Some of you may have known Danielle Fleury, but she left USDA to take another opportunity. But we wish her the best, and we very much appreciated the time she was able to spend with our team. And as I said, if you're in Nero, never fear, you will receive assistance. You will have an onboarding call with someone located in the regional office. This one about the budget revisions, Anna.
Oh, I don't see that when I was looking at the ASAP one, but you already put the slide up.
Do you need a budget revision?
What was the budget revision question?
If you no longer need to spend money on a budget line, but it is less than 10% of total project budget?
You can let us know. You can include it in your report or zip us an email, but as long as you don't spend those funds and you leave them in your ASAP account, it'll be there when the grant ends, and you'll just return them at that time. If it's a small amount. If it's a large amount, then reach out and have a conversation with us.
Okay. Only 2 people allowed to attend the gathering. Is that a recommendation or a requirement? Due to space restrictions, we have a hotel block, and also the venue is can only hold so many people. We ask that you only bring 2 people to attend the gathering. That was also stipulated in the request for applications. Is there evidence required for the matching? You should have submitted confirmation of matching funds along with your application.
And it is something that you'll report on when you submit your financial reports. There's a section for that.
We had a question about whether I could repost the website. Here is the image of the grantee page, and again, you'll receive any links in the follow-up PDF of the slides.
Oh my gosh, I didn't scroll enough for all these
questions about ASAP. Can't register for ASAP until we receive the invitation from USDA. I've submitted the ASAP form to Anna, but it looks like I can't register without the invite from you.
Correct. Well, that starts the registration, and then ASAP will reach out to you.
If we didn't budget enough money to bring 2 people to the gathering, can we increase the amount?
We can't give you additional funds at this point. If you have funds within your agency or organization that you can afford to pay for a second person, then we won't stop you, but we can't allow grant funds for that.
It's also not required that you bring 2 people. It is perfectly fine to bring for only 1 person to travel. Do we have a bank of photographs that can be utilized on materials? I would say contact your regional lead. I don't have a comprehensive answer to this at this time. I would say check the resources page on the website and contact your regional lead. And I also have a note from one of our regional leads who says that they'll be available to help with determining who could be the best person to attend the grantee gathering. So if you're not sure who you should send, you can contact your regional lead for that to help troubleshoot that as well. For purposes of matching funds, if it's a matching fund, do you have to track staff time or some other way of showing that the match was met by the grantee? That goes in FIPPers, correct?
Yeah, your match goes into FIPPers. We don't track your staff time. It's possible that if you ever have an audit, somebody might want to look at your records, but we don't request that up front.
Okay, and it looks like the questions are slowing down. We'll take a few more, and then we will close down the webinar for the day. But remember, the Q&A will be included on the recording, and if we did not get to your question, please reach out to us after the webinar. Can travel costs for the second person be part of matching if not included in the grant?
So again, you've already said what your matching funds are going to be used for in your budget narrative. So you can't, I mean, essentially what that would do if you used it for travel, that would be a budget revision, and you would be shifting funds from an already approved budget line item to be used instead for travel to the grantee gathering. So what that means is something that you said you were going to do in the grant, now you're not going to be able to pay for with the grant funds. So you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we want to make sure that you're able to get all your activities completed. So certainly talk to your regional lead and your grants officer, and we can sort of brainstorm ways to see if there's some way to make it happen, but I kind of feel like this early in the process, you're not going to know if you've underspent in a budget category and will have money left over. You might. So certainly reach out, but it's hard to say that definitively on the webinar because it's too general here.
We got one more question. We had assumed a 12-month grant period, but 529 shows a 2-year period. Can we end early, and how does that impact our reporting schedule?
So this is what we did. The start dates and end dates that were submitted with the applications were kind of all over the place from the different grantees. So we picked the same start date for everybody, and then the end date it was June 30th, whether it's 2020 or 2021. So if you put in an end date of July 30th, 2020, we bumped you all the way forward to 2021. So that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, you can end early, and you would just submit your final report. You need to reach out to the farm to school team and let them know that you're going to finish early so we can take you out of the queue for quarterly report for progress report notices and give you a final report, and then let me know or Carla for financial, and we can walk you through the process for submitting a final financial.
Right, and as Anna said, it will affect your reporting schedule you will not have to submit any other reports after you close out your grant.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems to have cleared all of the questions. If we did not get to your question, if it got missed at some point, you can reach out to us after this presentation. You can reach out to me. That's a different presentation. Sorry. You can reach out to me. My contact information is travis.hearn@usda.gov. You can reach out to farm2school@usda.gov, and your question will for sure get to the correct person. And you could also reach out to your grant officer. And if it's not a grant officer inquiry, then they will get your question to the correct person. So we're very excited to have you all on board. Thank you for staying with us through this webinar. And we look forward to seeing you at the Grantee Gathering in September if you're planning your implementation. And if you're training and you won't be at the Grantee Gathering, we look forward to working with you and look forward to having an onboarding call with you with your program officer. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks everybody.